When Andrew Shanahan decided to take his personal story and turn it into a work of fiction, the novel Before and After came into being. I was lucky enough to sit down with Andrew for episode number 84 of Storytelling with Seth, and the conversation that followed was one of those that always delights my ear when I get the chance to listen back through and put it together for an episode for you. Andrew did a wonderful job introducing the part of his personal story that is reflected in the novel, the elements he wanted to address, the great characters that made his novel so much fun to read, and also the potential for all of us to find the places where we draw hope from. Recognize that men need to talk, and also keep in mind the fact that along with faith, there is always conflict and trials. But what they bring out of us, well, that is the meat of the story, and that is the part we get to sink our teeth into in this conversation. Join me now for a really great talk with Andrew Shanahan about Before and After and so much more. Hello and welcome to another episode of Storytelling with Seth. I'd like to thank you for joining me today, and I'd like to thank my guest for joining me as well. He gave me the opportunity to give a read-through on his novel, and I believe you're going to really enjoy the conversation I'm about to have with Andrew. Andrew, how are you today, sir?
I'm really good, thanks, Seth. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Thank you for your book. Can you tell me really quick where you are, one, for anyone listening, and secondly, I'm going to move into where you came up with the book, and if perhaps where you are had anything to do with the beginning of that book.
Okay, sure. Well, I'm going to answer your where you are question geographically rather than spiritually.
Your choice, always. Always exactly, your choice.
Yeah, dealer's choice. So I am just south of Manchester, England, the UK. From if you want to get really precise, I am in my bedroom. So there you go. A little bit of inside information for you. In terms of where the book came from, so about 2014, I found myself incredibly fat, Seth. It's the truth of it. So I had been working on a business that had taken all of my sort of time, and I'd been working very long hours, and my diet had suffered as a result, and I was probably drinking a bit too much beer to try and speed relax in the evenings. And I'd put on a lot of weight. And so around about 2014, I sold that business and suddenly found myself with free time, and realized that, I wasn't happy with what I was doing with my weight. So really sort of looked around to see if I could find, organizations who could help me lose that weight, and just struggled. Couldn't find anything that was suitable for men. So there was a lot of Weight Watchers. There was a lot of, we have the Slimming World in the UK. But they were very, very focused on women and, the sorts of thing of support that women needed. So there's a lot of group work, but then the groups were all women. And I struggled as a result. So as I lost the weight, just sort of through scrapping and, doing it my way and making lots of mistakes, I thought there should be some more support for men out there. So I started an organization called Man v Fat. And the idea was to try and help other men like me out there who wanted to lose weight and give them some support. And that sort of has gone on and is still in operation today. We've helped over 4 million men around the world to lose weight and to get healthy and fit. And we do that through providing information through websites. There's a book. We run a lot of groups. We run a scheme called Man v Fat Football, which are football leagues, so soccer for you guys, soccer leagues for men who are overweight and obese. And, these are really supportive environments. And it's been really successful. And last year, 2 years ago now, I found that the business was just taking a lot of my time, and I wasn't particularly, I didn't feel like I was being as effective as I wanted to be. And so I sort of stepped down from the business. I'm still a director of the business, but, I stepped down from a day-to-day role and really wanted to go back to my first love. I'm a journalist by trade, and really felt that I wanted to write something fictional because it was just a real break from the work that I'd been doing. And so I wrote my first book, Before and After, and it was built off the experiences both I'd had with my weight and my weight fluctuating through my life, and also from the sort of conversations that I'd had with so many different men when I was working on Man v Fat. And that, in a very large nutshell, is where the idea came from.
Well, it's a nutshell that contains quite a bit. So let's keep that in mind as well. It's not like, hey, that's an ordinary nutshell worth of information. That's quite a bit to consider there.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there was something specific you were able to identify in addition to the need for support, and I'm believing maybe the community, that led to your success, and also the desire to create a community where men could achieve success with the support of other men, and then turning it later into sports programs as well to help support that goal.
I think so. I think some of the things that I really identified were that the existing forms of support out there were unsuitable for men for a variety of reasons. So the example I give, the rather crude example, but it's something that actually happened to me, was that I joined Weight Watchers and was sat in the group, and the leader of the group was talking to a room, of 99% female, and they were talking about how your periods can cause fluctuations in your weight. And I was sat there and I was thinking, this just isn't my problem. This isn't something that is affecting my weight. And so I found that really, but then at the same time, there were a lot of things that I felt were more tailored and more problematic for men that weren't being covered, such as the fact that I was working for, 13 hours a day. And, for example, if I was on the road, it was very, very hard to find healthy food at service stations on the motorway. And, these were what I felt were predominantly male issues that were causing were at least partly responsible for mine and presumably other men's weight gain. And so that was a really big realization that there were societal reasons why men's weight loss had different problems and different challenges to women. But then there are also biological differences as well. So men carry a lot more muscle, for example, just by default. And therefore they tend to lose weight quite a lot quicker because they have a higher metabolism, that sort of thing. And so there were specific challenges that I felt meant that a gendered approach to weight loss was actually an appropriate one. And then I think when we started it and when it became a community, we started with a crowdfunding campaign which reached 102% of its target very quickly. And it just struck me that there were a lot of other men out there who were wanting this sort of support. And potentially, one of the other things that was really a gendered issue is that women had this culture of talking about weight and weight loss, perhaps because the diet industry had focused on them since the 1960s, and men really hadn't. And they hadn't, they didn't have the language, they didn't have the vocabulary to talk about these things, and yet it was so obviously such a problem for so many of them.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because I'm reminded of the fact that I have heard it said on a few occasions that men need to talk, but rarely are they A, encouraged to, or B, given an environment where they feel that it's safe to do so. I think
Yeah.
addressing that is extremely valuable, and I'm guessing one of the keys to making connections with people, with specifically with men who are trying to make a change in their life, their lifestyle, their bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was this preconception that men were difficult to talk to about these things and about emotional things and about mental health things, because obviously mental health is so closely tied up with physical health. And in my view, it goes on that spiritual health is tied up with those things. I don't think you can have, if one of those things is out of balance, then I believe that the whole thing gets out of balance, and that's where problems occur. But you're absolutely right. That there was this preconception really that men didn't want to talk about it. But actually, I think what it was that they didn't often. I think it was the fact that they weren't asked about how they felt about their weight, and they weren't given those sorts of spaces and times to discuss those things. And certainly we found with the organisation that once you had a group of guys and they felt that they were, encouraged to talk and they were happy to talk, my goodness, you couldn't get them to shut up. They were really, really keen to talk, and talk in the most graphic terms, and to talk in the most explicit, heartfelt ways about how they felt and about their mental health as well. And I think that was really surprising, although perhaps it shouldn't have been for me, because I knew from myself that I did want to talk about these things. I did want to get healthier, and I did want to express the frustrations that I felt. And really, a lot of these sorts of feelings and a lot of these those emotions came out in the character in Before and After Ben. So he is 601 pounds. He's been a shut-in for 9 years. And so I wanted to write a book about weight and about how debilitating it was. And I think that my way of bringing that up as a topic was to put it into this apocalyptic scenario where I could sort of express some of these desperations and the frustrations that men had openly expressed to me.